The views expressed on this program are those of the producers and individuals appearing on this program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Sun Prairie Media Center staff, its video service providers, or the staff and elected officials of the City of Sun Prairie.
Hello and welcome to Real Reviews. My name is Jamison, and the man seated next to me this week is responsible for 52% of bowling shoe thefts. His name is Mike Roth.
It's funny. I've done it 104 times. I only take the left shoe.
Nice.
You never know when there's an accident that's going to happen, and I'm going to need a surplus of bowling shoes. Just lefts.
You're a sociopath.
Yeah.
Who does that?
Well, obviously me.
Obviously, we know that to be true. There's nothing made up about that at
Nothing. There is not. Very rarely is there something that's made up.
Right.
Yeah.
Strictly,
like occasionally.
Strictly the facts on this show. I'll tell you that. You can count on one thing. We're only giving you the facts.
Remember that time you said in my wiki page it said I was right-handed?
Yeah.
That's
total bogus. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to give you wrong facts on that one. All right, let's get into what we have to talk about this week, though, and I'm going to start us out with what we have on the marquee, as it were, with a film from Hulu. It is called Lucky Day, from director Roger Avery. This film stars Luke Bracey as a man named Red. Red is a safecracker who is just getting out of prison. He's ready to be a family man, settle down with his wife Chloe, played by Nina Dobrev, and his daughter Bea, played by Ella Ryan Quinn. Meanwhile, there's a merciless French-Canadian hitman hunting Red down on a quest for revenge because he blames Red for his brother's death. His hitman is played by the great Crispin Glover.
Oh my gosh!
Crispin Glover.
He came out of retirement?
Psychopath hitman with a French-Canadian accent. And so Red has to kind of balance all of these elements because he also has his former partner, Leroy. Leroy wants him to, played by Clay Bennett, also wants him to kind of come out of retirement and get back in the safe cracking business. Look, we got more jobs to pull down, man. And so he's trying to balance all of these things, the family life and his partner who he feels he owes things to, and being hunted down by Crispin Glover. He also has a kind of psycho parole officer played by Clifton Collins Jr., who is mercilessly following him, just harassing him, looking to bust him and send him back to prison. Like, he's got a vendetta against him to send him back to prison. So he's just, everyone's on him. It also has, we have Mark Dacascos, who I always love, loved him in John Wick 3. He's in here in like a weird small role as a guy who just hangs out in a bar talking smack.
Huh.
Here's the thing. This movie feels very dated. Like, it's interesting. These characters are interesting. But let me tell you something about the director.
Maybe it's because you have a guy who's been out of retirement since.
Well, here's the thing. Roger Avery, the director of this movie, is known. He collaborated with Quentin Tarantino a lot. In early Tarantino, like, he helped in writing elements of Reservoir Dogs, True Romance, Pulp Fiction, Natural Born Killers, like all these movies of that time period that all felt of a very similar genre, right? A lot of witty repartee, dialogue, violence, interesting characters. And he made a film that came out in '94 called Killing Zoe, which was very much the same in that same thing of Reservoir Dogs and Pulp Fiction. And this movie feels like it is trying, it feels like it belongs to that era.
Okay.
And it just
Not
feels,
in a good way.
No, it just feels dated. It carries this really strong mid-'90s cinema vibe in the dialogue and the characters and the situations. It just feels like I've seen a lot of pieces of this movie played in different. I mean, almost every one of these movies has similar elements of the guy just getting out of prison, his partner, the psychopathic hitman. Like these, it's almost a lot of True Romance. I mean, that's Christian Slater's character is all these people chasing after him, and he's trying to get away with the girl. And
do you think maybe maybe it's just we're getting so old that 90s is going to be cool again.
It might, but I don't know.
80s were really huge, and it's about time where
bring it back.
Yeah.
It's funny too though, because I mean, there's of course there's an uncrackable safe, right? That plays heavily into this movie. It's going to serve in the climax of the film, this uncrackable safe, because they just keep bringing it up like, oh man, you're the only guy that can crack this safe. Oh man, you're the only one. Of course, the safe's going to come up in the climax of this movie, and unfortunately, it just wraps up really poorly. This safe is the easiest safe ever to unlock.
Really?
Like, it's so loud. He's doing the old put his ear to it, like, and you hear ka-clunk. Like, okay, I can crack that safe. This does not seem that didn't take him a lot of effort either.
Yeah.
So there's like the things that I always loved about these kinds of movies. I always love like the snappy dialogue of the Tarantino films, right?
Yeah.
And the crazy background characters. There's always just some weird third characters. You're like, oh, what's that guy's deal, And I don't know. Too often this movie, it felt like the dialogue was really forced. Like it was. Like, oh yeah, no, I got to make this dialogue super witty, but it doesn't.
This is the formula.
It doesn't
and now
serve anything.
Yeah.
It's just to be there instead of like furthering anything. It's just like, no, we got to have just a conversation about something because that's what we do in this, Crispin Glover, I love Crispin Glover.
Yeah.
I love Crispin Glover. He plays his usual insane guy with this crazy accent that makes no sense. I don't know what it's supposed to be French Canadian, but I'm not sure where he came up with it. But he is like a good psycho. Like he kills with no thought. He's pretty brutal. He's a scary guy. I do appreciate Nina Dobrev in this movie plays more than just like the nagging wife. Like she actually is a character.
Okay.
Instead of just the wife who's like, oh, do what I want, But ultimately, it just made me want to watch like all the other films that I mentioned.
Okay.
Like, oh yeah, I want to watch a good version of this.
I'm assuming more movies like this is going to start coming out.
I'm sure.
We just went through, like with the Stranger Things, a big renaissance of let's get back to the 80s.
I think we're still working through that. But I agree. I mean, at some point, it has to naturally, we have to get into the 90s because that generation will have kids or whatever, and they're like, oh yeah, we got to get into that stuff.
I did see just a few days ago a guy wearing shorts with long underwear underneath his shorts.
Yeah.
That was a thing.
That was the height of my fashion back in the day, man. If I can get into wearing flannels and long underwear underneath everything I wear.
I actually just come back full circle because I have never stopped.
Get my
wearing
Junkos
flannels.
out. I'm ready to roll, man. Look out, kids. Anyways, Lucky Day. It's sitting on Hulu. I give it 2 stars.
No.
Yeah, it's kind of disappointing.
Oh.
Crispin Glover's worth a star on his own in my book, so take that for what it's worth. But yeah, not really recommend from me. Go check out any of the other films that we talked about. What do you have, sir, for our next movie on the marquee?
I have 7,500. I'm sure that's not how you're supposed to say
it. I think it's 7,500.
This is, it's probably 7,500, but either way, I've never actually heard them say it.
Sure.
So, directed by Patrick Volrath. It's a film that's entirely taken place inside the cockpit of a passenger airplane. And this passenger airplane is being hijacked by people who don't want the plane to land, and they want to get into the cockpit in a serious way. Joseph Gordon-Levitt, he plays the co-pilot, soon-to-be pilot, Tobias Ellis, and it's pretty much where his point of view is. You get to see outside of the cockpit through the cockpit TV screen that shows what's happening on the other side. He knows a couple of things. He knows he cannot let them inside, and if they do get inside, everybody's going to die anyway. So he has to make these really extremely hard choices for survival. You kind of feel that where he's sitting there and he's getting all this pain, knowing he is absolutely safe, but people he cares for
he's basically
on the other
sentencing
side.
people to death.
Yeah.
But he's deciding, like, I can't let you in, so go ahead and kill that passenger.
And I don't want to give away too much, but there's only a couple of characters, so I have to mention.
Yeah.
You also have Vedette, played by Omar Mimar. He is an 18-year-old who is part of this hijacking team, and you find out that this is a suicide mission. It's not supposed to land somewhere else. They don't have any demands. This plane is going to go down to kill thousands of people, including all the people that's inside
Right, because they're
the
aiming
plane.
for a city.
He ends up getting inside the plane, inside the cockpit, after lots of struggle. And he's still in charge, but you realize he does not want to die. So you get to see this young man who is very impressionable by the people who brought him there, and all of a sudden realize that his will to live and what they are doing to all these people inside the plane is wrong. At least wrong enough where he doesn't want to die doing this. And it's interesting watching this because all these people are meant to die anyways, but he still has a lot of sympathy for people he was really going to end up ultimately killing anyhow. This is about a little over an hour and a half, and really the only times you see outside of the cockpit is the very end, where they just scale back from the cockpit, and a little bit during the opening credits,
Right.
where you see found footage of the terrorists going through the airport. It kept me on my seat.
Yeah.
Tell you the truth, I was not really looking forward to watching this. There's a lot of depressing things going on. I want to see some more happy films or anything to just get my mind off of things that are going on. And when I saw that this was going to be entirely in a cockpit where people were going to die, I was like, ugh. But it's my job.
It's got good intensity, good like purposeful claustrophobia to it. I think the most interesting thing was I went into some research of how they made this film.
Yeah.
And it was really interesting to me that the production company bought an actual airplane. They didn't use a set. They bought an actual airplane and shot inside that airplane. They used that cockpit because the director wanted to have the real feel of the cockpit and the real size and scope of the cockpit. I don't know, he couldn't build that, so we were going to buy a plane. And so that was kind of interesting. And they also shot the film in long 15-minute sections where he kind of just let them improv a lot of it, let Joseph Gordon-Levitt kind of have control. And they would shoot long 15-minute shots. Okay, let's shoot another long 15-minute shot. We'll piece this together, which is not a normal way of doing it. But again, kind of gave it a real feel of being in the cockpit. And the movie kind of basically takes place in real time, right?
Yeah.
I mean, from the time that I was really drawn to him just by the beginning. We're watching him and the pilot just kind of have their normal pre-flight checklist and blah, blah, blah. And I could feel my stomach almost drop when they're going to take off. Like, okay, this feels real. I'm in here. This is cool. Unfortunately for me, I thought that the terrorists felt kind of weak as characters.
Yeah.
That was the drawback for me. And I spent a lot of this movie watching things happen on a tiny TV monitor. And so that was kind of my one drawback. Like, oh man, I wish these bad guys would have been more something. Just something.
I don't know what they could have really done with that. Really, it was Joseph Gordon-Levitt that really held everything together. And even when you only have really two actors, all three if you consider Tobias's girlfriend, Goki, who was played by Alan Tizell, you really didn't get to see much of her. It was between two people, and Tobias is the main character. When Vedette did come into the cockpit, though, he didn't really bring anything. He's very believable as an 18-year-old kid who doesn't want to die, but didn't have much more.
That
to
was
add
like,
to
okay,
it.
this is a big moment here now. He's in the cockpit. Because we spent most of the movie of just people banging on a door.
Yeah.
You know, saying, let us in, let us in, let us in. It's big bad wolf stuff for like an hour.
Yeah.
And like, okay, he's in the cockpit. Now what? It's like, I was kind of let down by that. I think Joseph Gordon-Levitt was really good. I think he was better than this film deserved. Like, as far as the script and everything, Joseph Gordon-Levitt's a really good actor. And he felt real to me. I don't know.
I was kind of surprised to see a one-man show done so well by him.
I think he's one of our better young actors. He's not even young anymore. He's probably like 40, but
no, he was young back in 30.
Yeah, I mean, I've been following.
Third Rock from the
big
Sun.
fan of his since he was young. He's not so young anymore, but I don't know. What did you give 7,500 or 7,500? As you
Thank you. Or it's 7.5 not also. I give it 3.5. I really enjoyed it, and maybe it's because I came into it with very low expectations and wondering why I want to be more depressed for 2 hours. But it was really, really good.
Fair enough. I gave it 2.5. I enjoyed. I think that they built tension really well in the movie. I just thought that the payoff was a little weak for me. I was hoping for a better payoff than what I got. But if it does sound interesting, it's sitting on Amazon Prime for you right now, and it's decent. Joseph Gordon-Levitt's a good actor, so he's never bad to watch. The next film we have, sir, is a film that we pulled out of the old Redbox, and it is from director David Koepp. It is called You Should Have Left. Let me tell you something about David Koepp real quick. This guy, here's some movies that we have reviewed. He's the man who brought us Mordecai. Remember that movie? Johnny Depp's
That
worst
was,
film, maybe?
It didn't
was
make
double
the
zero
Razzies.
stars. I think
Yeah.
we both got double zeros on it.
Yeah, that was a horrid, terrible show.
Yeah. This
I
is the
sat
man.
through the whole thing.
Yeah. But he also made Stir of Echoes, also starring Kevin Bacon, a decade ago. 2 decades ago, actually. Now I think it was '99, which is, I think, a really good horror movie. This movie also stars Kevin Bacon. There's a man named Theo. Theo is a former banker with a dark secret and a much younger actress wife, played by Amanda Seyfried. And they decide to take their daughter off to a beautiful vacation at a home in the Welsh countryside. He is kind of infamous due to the nature of his first wife's passing. And he is also pretty jealous of his wife's success and suspects infidelity in the marriage. Their marriage is falling apart at the seams.
Yeah.
And he's trying to escape his past and mend this broken marriage with this trip. And the house is strange that they go to right away. It's secluded. It's this beautiful house. But you see right there, he's measuring things because the house is bigger on the inside than it is on the outside. And it's kind of a throwaway line at first, like, well, it's bigger on the inside. Like, yeah, okay.
It's a TARDIS.
Yeah, right. Yeah, pretty much. Of course, phones don't always work, you know, so we got to throw that in right away. Most parts of the house, oh, my phone, I can't get a signal. Okay, classic, we need that. And then the house really seems to feel abnormal to them in different ways for each of them.
Yeah.
It kind of affects them, and it really affects their daughter, Ella, played by Avery Essex. And she really becomes a target of this house. And it's Kevin Bacon starts to realize, or Theo starts to realize, like, things are not right here. Clues begin making themselves readily apparent that not all is right here, especially when he goes into town. He talks to one of the local people, and they're like, oh, by the way, have you seen Stetler yet? He's like, who's Stetler? He's like, oh, no, I can't tell you anything.
And no one's cool enough to be like, yeah, maybe you should rethink your vacation.
Yeah, right. No. They're like, oh, you'll figure it out. Don't worry about it. So the daughter is very freaked out. And the house becomes a living thing in this movie. And this movie really wants to evoke The Shining. I mean, it's a very strong homage to The Shining. In a lot of the shots and the way it messes with Theo, and there's a lot of moments in this movie you're like, well, that's just straight out of The Shining, pretty much.
I was kind of getting more of that Cusack film. It was 1406, I
Okay,
think.
yeah, 1420.
Because they do a lot of time things, and once you get to that point, it's like there's really no good end to this. Because even if you could wait it out, like older haunted house, all you have to do is wait until morning and everything is fine. When houses can like just screw time for you,
yeah,
make
hallways
you redo
disappear. It just everything in the house changes and moves, and next thing you know, you're seeing things that aren't there. And
in a way, it just becomes kind of a torture flick in a way, because you know if the house wants to win, it can. It's just toying with you until it wants to end it.
Yeah.
And usually I don't like torture flicks, but in this case, I thought it was more fun. It wasn't gruesome or gory. It is a horror movie, but it's not like you're watching someone being physically damaged for tens of minutes at a time.
Now, I told you last week that this was originally made for Nicolas Cage.
Yes.
Nicolas Cage was supposed to do it. Last man had to drop out. Like, we got to find something Kevin Bacon. So I'm watching this movie, and I'm just picturing Nicolas Cage in here in all of his insanity, and I'm like, that would have been really fun. He would have made this so terrible. It would have been amazing.
Yeah. I think Kevin Bacon is actually a better choice on this.
I think he's a better actor.
It comes across, he doesn't come off as slimy or swarmy kind of. Yeah. Kevin Bacon, or Theo, he has a much younger wife,
right.
Susanna, played by Amanda Seyfried, right? And I think if Nicolas Cage was in that, he would have more of the air of, yeah, I deserve this. Look at me.
Exactly.
Where Kevin Bacon, he kind of put it off as, I should be jealous because I'm old. I've had
Right.
a lot of
And that is addressed in the movie, kind
Yeah.
of. Their dynamic and age difference isn't just blown off.
no, and I think if it was Nicolas Cage, it would be more blown off.
Yeah,
than
I agree with you on that.
Set.
I feel like this movie was kind of like in the movie itself, kind of a reflection of better films.
Uh-huh.
A lot of this movie had me going, oh yeah, yeah. Much like with Lucky Day, I'm just like, oh yeah, I've seen better versions of this.
Yeah.
And I think that the buildup was decent in this movie. I was enjoying it. I think
Mm-hmm.
that it was, the buildup was predictable. Like, I don't think there's anything in here that was unpredictable, really.
There's nothing really original.
Right,
either.
and that's
Yeah.
the thing. I really felt like the last 20 minutes of it that were a real letdown to me. Like, once there's a moment where Amanda Seyfried's character leaves the movie for a little while,
Yeah.
and it feels like from there on, I was like, oh, it's just, I don't know. It unraveled for me.
Yeah.
And that was kind of a bummer, because I was in on the ride for most of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. There's like a scene where he's going up the stairs and they just kind of play the time thing a
Yeah.
little bit too much. Like, hey,
Just
if you
too
didn't
much
get it
of
now,
that.
you're really going to get it.
Exactly. You spent the whole movie building it up.
Yeah.
We don't have to keep building it up now. Let's pay it off.
I was interested in Kevin Bacon. He doesn't play just Theo, but he also
Ah.
plays another character.
Yeah.
And I was really surprised on that. Well,
Mhm.
I was surprised once I got to the point where I'm like, oh, I bet it's this.
That's fair. What did you give You Should Have Left, sir?
I gave it a 3. I thought it was a little better than okay. I enjoyed it, but
Alright.
yeah, it's not groundbreaking, and I don't think I'll ever watch it again.
I agree with you on that.
Alright.
I think I gave it a 2. Did I give it a 2 again? Yeah.
You
Yeah,
had a
it's
bad
just-
week.
Yeah, it wasn't great. It wasn't a great week. Nothing over 2.5. That's nothing over meh. I don't like that.
I'm sorry.
It'll get better. Don't worry. It will get better.
It too will
It
pass.
has to. All right, let's continue on with our Summer of Keanu. We are talking about another Keanu film. This time we are going to 2013 for a film called 47 Ronin, sir.
Yes, we are. Directed by Carl Renchish.
Yeah, Carl Rinch.
Rinch, all right.
First film he ever made.
Really?
Yeah.
They gave him a lot of money for
Well,
his first film.
originally he wanted this to be like a small art house samurai movie.
Okay.
And then
Just
Universal,
like 47 Ronin?
and Universal kept saying, no, we want it bigger. No, make changes. No, make
Yeah.
changes. Change it to this now. Rewrite the script. Next thing you know, the budget's $200 million.
I did not get a chance. I wanted to watch the original
Yeah.
before
Well, there's been,
coming
like,
onto the show.
8 versions of this movie.
Yeah, but there's like the one that's the big one. And
Sure.
It's based on a true-ish story that gets fableized and
Yeah.
becomes better and more grand. This had a huge budget behind it, and part of that reason is, well, there's a couple of reasons I didn't like this movie,
Mhm.
but Keanu Reeves is 1/8 Chinese.
Yeah.
And that kind of irks me
Yeah.
a little bit.
That was one of the big issues when this came out was
Yeah.
we were just starting to talk about the whitewashing of Hollywood
Yeah,
at this
and
time.
then they just did it over and over and over
Sure.
again. They did Last Samurai and the Great Wall.
Great Wall,
and
yeah.
stuff like
You
that.
know
It's
it.
like this was not an awesome idea for Keanu to do, and I'm sure he liked the idea because I know he's interested in the martial arts and stuff like that. But it doesn't really advance his career being in something like this. It is beautiful, but they want style over substance of the story. A lot of the situations, like you come up to a burned out town, but all the paper windows are there, and yeah, it's cool. Paper windows are awesome, but I mean, there is no try to get realism. It's mostly how cool is the costume, how cool is the location.
And I think that's what this movie faced a lot of trials and tribulations. Like
yeah,
it's so many rewrites, so many just the studio notes, and they basically kicked the director Carl Rinch out of the editing room once it was done. They're like, "You're out. We're gonna cut this movie."
uh-huh.
And so this movie was like dead on arrival. I remember when the trailers came out and people were like, "Oh yeah, look, it looks cool looking trailer, right?"
Uh-huh.
But then it was like, oh, word of mouth came out quickly, and it was one of those movies that just never had a chance at the box office, and it never was going to remake that money that they spent, and so automatically it's like, well, this movie's a bomb.
Yeah.
And it's a bit long in parts. I've watched this movie a couple times. It's long in parts, but it's beautiful in parts.
Yeah.
And you have, samurais and shogun and witchcraft and forbidden love and dragons.
Yeah, and the CG was pretty good for the time.
I think it's beautiful. Some really beautiful scenes in here. The dialogue is really stilted, especially with Keanu. He's not great at that. I do love like Hiroyoko Sanada, who plays Oishi. I really like. I like that. I like Min Tanaka, who plays Lord Asano, who's the lord who takes him in and then ultimately has to commit seppuku early in the movie to kind of restore order. And that kind of sets this movie on its course of them seeking revenge for him. I really like him. I like him in everything he does. Unfortunately, this movie was it just never had a chance.
No.
And it's unfortunate because this was kind of Keanu coming off of The Matrix. And everyone's like, oh yeah, Keanu, here we go.
Yeah.
And then he made some bad Matrix sequels and 47 Ronin, and suddenly his star dimmed for a while.
He had no choice with the Matrix movies. They
Right.
couldn't make another one without him. That would be
But that's the
difficult.
thing is like those films also kind of stepped down in quality very quickly from the original. And this came along right at that same time where it's like, oh.
But you know
ouch.
what? Everybody loves Keanu Reeves.
He's the
Even
best.
though he may make bad movies, and
Yeah.
he does. He makes
Oh,
bad movies.
there's no doubt.
But he seems like a great guy, and people just want to give him work. He
You know,
really works hard at stuff.
You know what's
He really
interesting, though?
does.
This movie, as terrible as people think it was, as bad as it was at the box office, one of the legendary bombs.
Yeah.
I was just reading this week. It has first off, it had a nice secondary life after the box office, DVD rentals, stuff
Yeah.
like that. It had a nice second life. But just reading this week that now they are making a sequel to this movie that is set 300 years in the future in a weird, like futuristic, I'm trying to remember the name of it, but like this weird, like raver type society with 47 Ronin in it.
Well, hopefully they use Japanese people.
I don't think they're going to use Keanu. I know that. He's got other things happening. But anyways, that's 47 Ronin. Let's see. What do we have next? Let's thank our sponsors, sir.
All
Marcus
right.
Theaters. Thank you for sponsoring this program. The Palace here in Sun Prairie. We do appreciate it. We always encourage you to check out what they have going on there. They may not be showing movies in the theater, but they got things going on, especially on the weekends, where you can go and support them in these hard times for the theater. And they appreciate it. I know they do. Next, sir, let's take a look at what we're going to be talking about next week. We have a few interesting things we're talking about. First, on Netflix, there's a film called Fearless. It is an animated film starring the voices of Gabrielle Union and Dwayne Wade about a teen gamer whose favorite video game drops superpowered infants into his backyard.
That is odd.
I
That sounds like
know.
a very odd film.
I haven't seen that movie before. We also have on Netflix a film called Project Power, which is starring Jamie Foxx and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It sounds really interesting. It's this film about a pill that gives you superpowers for 5 minutes.
Oh.
And it gets out into the world as an underground drug, and now this former dealer and a cop are going to try and track it down.
We've seen that story before, but never for 5 minutes.
Right.
That is a very short.
It's a short window.
Yeah.
You better get what you need done quick.
If you're going to go around flying,
Yeah.
definitely take more pills with you.
Keep a stopwatch, too, because you want to know when that 5 minutes is
Yeah,
up.
true.
Get closer to the ground. We also have a film called The Tax Collector. This is David Ayer's new film starring Shia LaBeouf and Bobby Soto. And over on Disney Plus, there's a film called Magic Camp starring Adam Devine, where he is a guy who returns to the magic camp that he went to as a child as a camp counselor. He's trying to reignite his career.
That sounds terrible.
From the looks of it, it looks kind of like School of Rock-ish, only with magic instead of music. That's what it looks like to me.
It just sounds terrible.
We'll
I'm
see.
sorry.
I like Adam Devine.
I haven't seen him in a movie that I liked except for bit parts.
It's true, because I did say when we reviewed Jexy last year, like, this guy might not need to be a lead actor.
Yeah.
Because Jexy was horrific,
Yeah.
and he was a big part of that.
He's better as that guy in,
He's comedy relief.
yeah, comedy
Bring him in,
reliefs.
comedy, Pitch Perfect movies, perfect for
Yeah.
that. Stuff
That's
like
what
that.
I was trying to think
Absolutely.
of. Pitch Perfect.
Next week, we'll also be continuing our Summer of Keanu. We're almost near the end of it. Summer is ending, and so is the Summer of Keanu. Next week, we're going to have a fun little one. I'm not even going to tell you what it is, but it's going to be fun. I can't wait to talk about it.
Yeah.
But we only have a couple more weeks.
It's another one with a very far throwback.
Well, maybe. We'll see. All that is happening next week, and I encourage you to tune in. And you know what? If you want to find more from us, if you want to communicate with us, I haven't thrown this out there in a long time. We encourage you to find us on social media. If you have Facebook or Twitter, so do we. Find us on there. Connect with us, like us, friend us, chat with us, whatever. You can find us Real Reviews TV at Real Reviews TV on both platforms. We look forward to talking to you there. But until next week, I'm Jamison.
I'm Mark Roth.
Thanks for watching.